We need to stop AI right now. And that is according to some of the greatest super forecasters in the world, the authors of AI 2027. So today we're going to go back to the well a little bit. If you ever watched our most popular episode ever on AI 2027, which was a fairly doom and gloom forecast on what AI was going to do to the world, you will be familiar with the folks involved in AI 2040. This is less of a prediction and more of a recommendation, which is to say we are in the moment now where we need to make some changes. The core of the thesis here is that we're getting pretty close to self-recursive learning with AI. And once we hit that moment, which they predict is in the next 24 months or so, as we like to say in Ireland, we will be rubber ducked, which rhymes with another word that we're all familiar with. So, Matt, tell us a little bit more about the thesis.
Well, I think there's people who are very interested in what they call AI safety. And the thing about the AI safety experts are they have been absolutely right about the progression of AI and even the timing of AI since the beginning. The original reason OpenAI was founded was to block Demi Hassabis and Larry Page and Sergey Brin at Google from becoming dictators of the world, because they thought this technology was right around the corner and it was going to be so powerful that unless there was a counterforce of some kind of other competitive institution, Google would just run away with the whole game and there would be no competing with them. They had all the compute, the data, the talent. There was going to be nothing to stop them. And so they started OpenAI. So, when people say doom and gloom, I tend to be an optimist, but I think it's very important and something I'm trying to cultivate in myself is like pay attention to people who have very different opinions than you and also have been very right. And this particular group, the most notable person is Scott Alexander, who has the blog Playstar Codex. That kind of crew, rationalists, safetyists, they've been right all along. They said, we're going to have AI that can do all these things. We're going to worry about cybersecurity, biosecurity. They've been right up to now. And even AI 2027, which predicted, huge breakthroughs. By the end of 2025, we were like, man, this didn't really come through. The last 6 months have been everything they promised. So now they're saying what we need to do is shut down AI, not completely, but drastically slow it down and make it transparent. And if we don't do that, the most likely outcome is just what OpenAI was worried about when they founded it, which is one group, whether OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, who knows, maybe some Chinese lab at some point, is going to have a runaway self-reinforcing process where the models will get trained by bigger compute, which will give them more access to money. They'll make even bigger compute, which will give them better models, which means that for every marginal compute, they do even more with it. So economically, if we keep the economic system going in the way it has been, one group just wins, right? So that's the basic thesis. I don't think their suggestion is the right way to go about it. But again, I didn't predict AI would be doing what it was doing in 2026, and they did. So, okay, who's right? So we need to, I think this is why we need to pay attention to it.
Let's talk about two things that I think they got right. One is that this is a race to the best intelligence possible, and it's showing up in the shape of a geopolitical race. It's us against China, essentially, right? For the most part. So that is correct. And the second thing that they were correct on is, and it's only come to light in the last 6 weeks, is we all sort of assumed we would continue on this track of democratize access to AI. We'd all have access to the best thing. The Fable 5 debacle showed us that is not going to be the case. So what does that mean? The thesis or the premise here is that the wrong people or a small set of people will get access to this superhuman intelligence. And then we rely on not regulation or society or all of us together to decide what to do with this. You rely on a handful of people, maybe even one person, whether that's the US president or the CEO of the most powerful AI entity. And then what happens with that? Well, we sort of have two possible types of outcome. We have drastic impact on employment and the economy. And so a shift of wealth towards a very consecrated group of people. Or you have some sort of disaster outcome where somehow we kick off World War III, or there's a constraint around energy or something, and something goes horribly wrong.
Yeah, and I think those disaster scenarios, we talk a lot about cybersecurity, and there's been some major breaches. There's been some major security bugs detected by AI, and I'm sure there's been a lot of money stolen using AI already. And getting access to these latest models um, definitely presents economic risk. But like we talked about last time, or maybe 2 episodes ago, these things can program viruses as well. Like the same capabilities in language have applications in detecting certain strings and proteins and things like that. AlphaFold, which uses kind of the same GPUs, I don't think it's the exact same LLM type architecture, is able to predict millions of proteins that speeding up protein discovery very quickly. We're getting peptides, all kinds of peptides for weight loss and all this stuff. Well, we might be at the verge of something much more dangerous than a cybersecurity breach, which is we just spent, 2 years inside because of COVID. Some
And
people think it was manufactured. Whether or not it was, we could manufacture another one. And now we're going to have capabilities that are a millionfold better in terms of if you look at AlphaFold's capabilities versus the previous status quo protein discovery. Um, And that's it could be an extinction level event. I mean,
yeah.
we know that there's viruses that have killed a third of people worldwide in the last few hundred years. It's not like outrageous that we would think that that could happen again.
Yeah. And so if AI 2027 was the doomsday scenario, we're along that path and we have sufficient evidence to say, is it worth having a rational conversation about what we should do now that we're on some version of a path to a doomsday outcome? And the answer is yes. Look, stuff is happening where we're like, well, we really didn't think it was going to happen, but it is happening. So what are we going to do about it? And so what they've done is they have laid out a scenario, well, actually multiple scenarios. And again, it's around kind of a political trajectory, but they've laid out 5 plans, A, B, C, D, and S for shutdown. And it's varying levels of control and constraint over the means for AI to progress and to learn and to infer. And so plan A is this recommendation that, well, I don't know, Matt, how do you want to describe this? Verified slowdown is the headline on it.
Without digging too much into details, which are honestly like kind of boring and less fantastic than AI 2027. What they're proposing is a negotiated slowdown with transparency, but the core crux of it and the most important aspect of it is it would be the U.S. and the Chinese both agreeing that we're going to slow down AI and we're not going to build all these data centers right now, which could, cause a bubble. It could cause an economic crash. It's putting a lot of debt onto the biggest companies. It could crash the stock market very easily. Why don't we slow that down? Get to a more stable equilibrium where we understand the capabilities of models. We build in some more of the kind of safeguards. We make sure that we don't have extreme job loss. Now let's contrast that scenario of, okay, U.S. Donald Trump, they put the negotiation after the 28 election. So I think they recognize that Donald Trump is not going to be the guy who's going to negotiate a durable he'll do something to, make himself a few $billions, but I don't think he's going to negotiate this. But imagine somebody afterwards, they make it I think what they're proposing, it's a third of their essay, is in the 2028 election, this needs to be a topic. And so to that end, I think this is a smart essay. I think the things they're discussing represent real risks. This is one scenario that could happen. And if it becomes a key part of the 2028 election, you could imagine it getting implemented, especially since China is likely going to be very far behind by then. I mean, they're behind right now. We could talk about Kimi K3 came out, but there's a plausible scenario that hopefully a reasonable Democrat or reasonable Republican takes this up and takes all of the current energy around people shutting down data centers and worried about AI job loss, pushes it into, hey, we're going to have, Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, just declared a 1-year ban on data centers. Well, if that works for Kathy Hochul, maybe it'll be something that resonates in that election. It becomes a referendum on AI, and they have the political credibility to slow things down in 2028. or 2029, which is their recommendation. And then we spend like 6 years where we kind of just slowly get to some level of capability. And then in 2040 is their plan. We can kind of we'll reach a new equilibrium where we've integrated, we understand it, we've built new government and social institutions that account for AI, and it doesn't just come over us like a wave where Demi Hassabis or Sam Altman is the king of the world because he just has all access to all the compute and absolute control.
I'm gonna offer my opinion. I've been kind of holding back on it. I think it makes sense to be having the conversation. I think things are happening that they suggested would happen. But the fundamental assumption here is that somebody or some entity will create a super intelligence,
Mhm.
and the return on that intelligence could be devastating. And I kind of broke it into two scenarios. There's the disaster scenario, biotech, terrorism, war, whatever that
Yeah.
is. The flip side of that is a significant impact to employment. And the issue that I have with that scenario is that I think you and I are both experienced. And many people, if you're using AI in your workplace or you're trying to sell AI enabled type of applications, we are not seeing the return on the intelligence that we thought maybe a year ago we might. In other words, it's not as threatening as we thought it would be. And there's two things that make it threatening. One is its power, right? If it's really good at doing something and can do our jobs, just has that core intelligence power to do it. And then the second is the means to act with that intelligence. And the means to act means it could be, well, I'm regulated, so I don't have the means to act. I'm super intelligent, but I can't do anything. Or in order to take action with my super intelligence, I need physical arms and legs and robots to do stuff. They don't yet exist. Or the real one that is a major constraint, the knowledge, the data to actually do something. And we keep talking about this, but LLMs don't know a lot about the world. They only know the digital, largely public world, right? So there is so much information. I keep saying this encapsulated, encoded, embedded in body language, in tribal knowledge, in institutional knowledge. There's all this stuff that we need to learn as humans to do jobs. And it just is not very easy right now and won't be for the next couple of years for AI to absorb that into its training, which is really where it needs to happen. So we're not seeing a high rate of diffusion, an extremely high rate of diffusion of AI into the workplace.
Well,
So
without trying to like hang too much off of this central topic, I mean, I think that's the 2040 plan. Um, but when just kind of breaking that out and talking about recursive self improvement, which I think is one of the key features there. Something interesting happened this week during the World Cup final. A mathematician at Anthropic had gotten a suggestion from his friend. It's like, hey, check out this Jacobian conjecture, which is a conjecture about polynomials in a matrix. It was an important math problem, named one of the top 100 problems to solve in the 20th century. 25 years ago, they've been working on it for 100 years almost. And during the World Cup final, where Spain beat Argentina, it popped out a counterexample. And so everyone had believed that this conjecture was true, and it popped out a counterexample. And what was incredible is it was just an equation. It was just a set of equations. It wasn't like some deep that million lines of code, abstract concepts. It was just like, what about this equation? And you're like, oh, damn, yeah, that does have a non-zero determinant and has these qualities. Okay, well, that's a counterexample. And it's been something that mathematicians have worked on for a very long time. There's probably only like 500 or 600 people who had that capability in the world. Well,
mhm.
once Fable, it was using Fable, got to the point where it could do that, well, now, could kick off as many as you want. So that's something that's very scalable. Now that we have these giant data
Mhm.
centers and we have capable models, now you think about people being paid 20, $30 million a year to be AI researchers, right? So there's a huge demand. How many people work at Anthropic? Like 5,000, right? I'm sure there are low hanging recursive self improvement or new model paradigms that there's maybe only like 100 people a couple years ago would have had like Andre Karpathy. And now there's maybe 4 or 5,000. So you're getting better results. Well, what happens when there are classes of those types of architectures that can be checked independently by a Fable class model or Fable 6 or whatever, Soul 6 when it comes out for ChatGPT? What if that has the capability and you run it and you get a similar result? At the beginning of the year, we had cyber attacks that were far better than we thought were possible 6 months ago. Now we're solving mathematical problems that people have worked on for 100 years. Is it really so hard to believe that recursive self-improvement or the types of AI models that are able to learn on the fly, and I think address some of your concerns, that they don't learn, they don't get the cues? Well, why not? I don't have a good reason. Like, everything that's happening now is not something that I could have predicted, I don't think.
My conjecture here is that we may well get recursive self-learning. And that example that you gave is really interesting one. It's a constrained one. The
Mhm.
question is, what are you going to do with it? I don't know anything about that, right? So I don't even know what it might be useful for. But I do know that if it is useful for doing something, there's about 10 more steps that someone might need to take in order to make it valuable. It's like, okay, well, great. So now it needs to be, we need to program that, put it on a chip. The chip needs to go into a piece of hardware and something needs to happen. You're like, okay, well, that's going to
Mhm.
take a bunch of time, right? Okay, so the return on intelligence for that, yeah, it's pretty good, but the true return is when you put that into some process and manifest it somewhere else and deliver the real value that needs to happen. So in terms of the threat to employment of recursive self-learning, it's actually relatively lower. So if we roll it all the way back to AI 2040 here, I'm less concerned about huge impacts to employment because software was interesting, a very constrained type of a thing. So it was susceptible to being disrupted quite quickly by AI. But most jobs aren't like that. You said it many times before. It's a bundle of tasks. And so AI is, I'm less concerned there. It will get there. I know that. But I'm less concerned about that. So when I think about AI 2040 and that type of impact, I'm not really concerned in the next 4 to 5 years that that's enough time for us to adjust as society as we see jobs disappear. What
Yeah,
I'm
I don't,
more
I don't know.
concerned.
There's a lot of assumptions in what you're saying. I mean, yeah, there are many, many things in business that have many, many steps, but there's also, I don't know, we've been doing business a long time, and you've been a product manager. You see the problem close up across many
Hmm.
steps. A lot of reasons there's a lot of steps is because, I don't know, businesses are intrinsically kind of like grinding, friction-filled things, and some new technology comes out and it just skips all of that. You don't need the business anymore. It just is internalized. And I think that's happened to a lot of startups. Look at this amazing stuff I can do with this wrapper. Or, even some of the ones that are successful now, like Harvey's so good at AI. We know else is good at AI. The very next model that Anthropic releases. And then it's not about improving the quality of Harvey. It just skips over it. And we've seen that internalizing capabilities into the model. Um, and eventually you just don't end up oh, how do we facilitate the multi-step process? Well, there aren't multiple people anymore. It's all internalized to the models. If a couple agents get together, do some neuralese chat that you don't understand and produce the result, and you're like, that's good. And the whole legal firm goes away, or the startup goes away.
But the thing is, they don't. I mean, even if you abstract to that level, if the contract is written completely from start to finish by AI, okay, that's still only a very small part of the overall process of doing a deal between two businesses, right? So
Well, yeah, but like
it,
there's
it
self-serve businesses, right? Like there's self-serve, there's enterprise sales that are they're you have a salesperson, you call it enterprise sales, and then you have self-serve, right? Well, what if self-serve could negotiate with you, right?
yeah,
That's an expansion of something that already eliminates people, and the domain of self-service products becomes 10 times larger than enterprise sales. Well, we didn't eliminate enterprise sales, but we still have probably potentially put a bunch of people out of work or radically changed our understanding of the domain. Are all mathematicians going to go out of work? And Sam Altman had a point, which is he was the kind of guy when he was funding, OpenAI initially. He was talking about this is going to eliminate all the jobs. And he came out even a year ago and was just saying, hey, this is going to eliminate all the jobs. Be careful. And now we have these incredible models. And if you look at the employment data, we're getting slightly more jobs. And so, I think my version of the economy is not that there's a bundle of tasks or a bundle of jobs, that in fact it's a highly interacting competitive tension between capital owners, labor, and all these different people, all with different interests. And AI coming in and doing a bunch of the jobs doesn't necessarily change that competition as long as it doesn't completely capture all of the value. And I think that's your point. Is like if it doesn't do everything that a human could do, it speeds everything else up so much that that person who only did 2% of the problem and the other 98% were solved by AI, well, now we have 1,000 times as much to do. So there's actually more demand for that last 2% of a person's capabilities. And we see that with labor, like labor used
Yeah.
to be energy. It used to be picking up rocks and putting them in piles and plowing fields. And now all that stuff is done by hydrocarbons and now eventually um, electrical power from the sun. So there's really no limitation to it anymore. But we work more hours than we did back then, even though 99% of the things that human used to do in the Middle Ages is completely replaced by machines.
Yeah, and actually, and maybe we'll wrap it after this, but it's interesting to me. I think if you grab somebody from the 50s and tell them the jobs we do, they would probably look at us and go, "Why? Why is that important? Is that even a thing?" So, we humans over time we shift our tastes and our needs and the things that we want to spend our. So, in 10 years' time, we'll be doing things that I maybe didn't find interesting or even think were possible. So, the whole landscape will
My
continue.
first job out of school, they're like, "Hey, do you wanna do this?" And I was like, "You're gonna pay me that much to do that math? Okay, okay, I'll deal." And, so it's not something that we have to understand.
Well, I need to move on to something. Firstly, an apology. I went on vacation for 2 weeks, and that's why there's been a 2 week gap between episode
July
69.
numbers are way down because we didn't release episodes, so
Yes, we didn't. So here
that's
we
hurting my
are,
feelings, yeah.
episode 70, Matt. I honestly didn't read anything with the word AI in it for the last 2 weeks, and it was glorious. So we do like to talk about other things that caught our attention. So you're going to have to carry the load here. Over the last 2 weeks, what else
Oh,
caught your
geez.
attention?
Oh, yeah, okay, so, episode 70 our last one?
No, this
Um
one's 70.
The Great AI Draft. I did better. I was pretty good. Well, so a bunch of stuff happened. Uh, Fable has been made permanent on the subscriber plan, which is one I have. It's a great deal. It's like 5 or 6x cheaper than if you ran the API yourself. So very happy. I've been using Fable for all kinds of stuff. It's just better. It's less friction. Um, it's fewer times you get stuck or get the wrong result. It's so good. It's like, oh, let me audit all of my invoices. Let me ask it to do that. It just does it, and so much more of the time it's right. And so that's been fantastic. And the reason it's moved ahead so much is because K3 came out, which is this Chinese. It's a company called Kimi, and we've talked about their models in the past. 2.5 was great. At the beginning of the year, it was the very best at making slide decks, which is a huge theme of mine. Fable has gotten so good at making slide decks, and you can actually, if you're making slide decks, put a sample slide deck and say mimic this. It will mimic your slide deck. Don't just create Fable slop that all look. It just looks like AI produced. If you see enough of these slide decks, you can put those in. But now Kimi's come on and they're great at cybersecurity. Grok released Grok 4.5, which is also great at cybersecurity. It's trained on all the cursor data. If you remember Grok and XAI or SpaceX, whatever, it's all getting talk about like one guy being in control of everything. All the Musk verse is merging into one company. Once he acquires Tesla, which he might, he'll probably just rename the whole thing X, and it'll be worth $10 trillion, whatever he says it's going to be. But anyway, they acquired Cursor for $60 billion. They used that new data to retrain, and Grok 4.5 has good coding capabilities, which is important because then all of his companies are going to be using Grok so that other companies can't leverage him or train on his data. And you're going to see a lot more of that sovereignty. So those were some of the big things that happened recently.
I did read a bunch of stuff, actually. I lied when I said I didn't read anything with the term AI in there, but it was a great time for reflection. And I will post some of the stuff that I read on breakneckpodcast.com. With that, Matt, I think we can land it.
Well, it's good to have you back. I am excited for regular episodes.
There we go. There we go. All right, Matt, thanks. We'll leave it there.
Thanks, Ian.